Hey, hello. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. I hope you're doing well, and I hope you're ready for the very first video in the Firebase chat application series. In today's video, the goal is to build out the login page of our application right over here. In the very first video, I showed you guys a quick demo of our chat application. So if you missed that video, you can find it in the description link below. All right, that being said, I'm going to go ahead and start building out our application. And the goal again is to make our app look somewhat like this here. We have our create account page. We can click on this guy to bring up our image selector. We have the email password and the create account button at the very bottom. And then lastly, we can click on the login on the top left. This is going to toggle the entire page to look more like a login view. In other words, we have the email and password and login button below. Okay, hopefully that sounds good. We are going to get started by going back into our Xcode editor right here. So I'm currently using Xcode 13, I believe. This is the current version, and it looks like this right here. Whatever version you are on, it should be fine. Go ahead and create an iOS project using the app right here. I'm going to double click on that. And for the actual product name, I'm going to call this the LBTA SwiftUI Firebase. Let's kind of capitalize that, Firebase chat. And it doesn't really matter what your application is called so much, but make sure to keep an eye on the organization identifier right here. I'm just going to leave this as the default, and you'll see the bundle identifier is com LBTA and your product name right here. We'll be using this bundle ID later on when we create our Firebase application. Okay, everything else looks pretty good to me. I'm going to click on next, and we're now ready to create our project inside of our computer. I'm going to create this, and you'll see once everything is ready, I'll have my application set up just like this. Normally, I don't really need this right side panel, so I'm just going to close out of that guy. Looks pretty good. And then now I'll expand this out. So typically when I'm developing an iPhone application in 2021, I like to use the iPhone 13 Pro Max simulator. And once I have that selected, I'll hit the resume on the right side. You'll see the content view here. It's going to be drawn out ever so slightly on the right side panel. This is the preview panel, and your application is looking pretty good. So hello world, let's build out our login page. Okay, as you can see, everything is being updated on the right side every time we modify our code on the left side. And again, the goal for today's video is to simply build out this page here. And if we have enough time, we'll also look into Firebase and installing Firebase auth, but only if we have enough time. Okay, that said, I'm going to go ahead and modify this content view. And the first thing I want to do is to start creating this look and feel for our application. It has a very simple navigation bar at the very top. I will create the bar using a navigation view, and inside of my navigation view, I will put in a scroll view, and then I will use a text right here, and here is my creation account page, and that looks pretty good. I don't really need this left side here, so I'll close out of that with that button there. You'll see two simulators on the right side, which is not great. So I will remove the bottom text. The moment that I do that, you'll see your view look just like this. Next thing I will do is to give my scroll view a navigation title, and let's say create account like so. Okay, and now that everything is kind of drawn out correctly inside of my app, I'm ready to build out the top toggle bar here. So again, this is called a UI segmented control in UIKit. Inside of SwiftUI, which is what we're using, this is simply a picker component. And it's still relatively new for a lot of folks, so I'll just type this out relatively quickly. And the way I'm going to do this is to use the selection and label content. you're going to need to provide your picker with a binding. The binding represents which state it's in. It could be in the login state or the create account state. So the way I am going to do this is to simply do this here. I'm going to give this guy a state variable of var and is login mode. I think that's a pretty good name. So this is going to start off as false, which means I'll be in a create account state. All right, next thing I'll do is for the binding, I'll use $, which is to actually get the binding like this. And just type in $is login mode. All right, next is our label. This is the interesting bit, which is pretty confusing. Picker here, doesn't really matter what you type in there. And lastly, hit enter again, and you'll get this autocomplete for your content. So I'm just going to type this in really fast here. We'll have a text login and text create account like that. Once you have your code ready, you can hit the resume button right there, or just hit Command Option P to resume. Hopefully that will kind of update my preview on the right side. I'm currently on a Mac Mini M1, which means that our preview should render out quickly. I noticed that sometimes the preview doesn't work all that well, and you might have to restart it once or twice to get your view showing. Okay, now that your preview is up and running, you'll notice that you have your login here. And when you have your default picker, it creates this kind of drop down type of pop-up. And you can click that, and you'll see that kind of functionality. And then the last thing, in order to get your segmented control bar, you simply need to type in the picker style and type in the segmented picker style like that. And once you have that, your picker should show up like this here. Now, if you look at your picker, right, it has these two options. You can create some padding. So I just want to make it look a little nicer. I'll put a padding right here. And then next is the default selection for your picker, right? You have login and create account. If you want to default on one of them, you can just do this here. So I'm going to call a tag, and let's use false. And then this is the tag of true. Now, trying to explain this is a little bit confusing, but basically this selection right here is tied to the is login mode. And currently the default value is starting off as false, right? So whichever element in here that has the tag of false, it's going to just default that as the highlighted state. And as you can see, the create account is defaulted like so. You can click on login right now. Once you click on login, it'll actually modify the binding up above here. So the state variable, this will actually become a false or a true value when you have this login here. And then when you toggle back to create account, this state goes back to false. So just, a little bit of SwiftUI programming there. And I think this is pretty straightforward. Okay, next up, all I want to do is, I think I'm ready to start creating the rest of my page here. And the thing that I will do first is to include this image right here. First, I will go right below, and let's just say this right here. So the way I'm going to create this button right here is to use an image with the system name of, let me just use person there. You'll see that guy showing up. You can use person Phil, and it looks a little bit different. To make it very, very large, I'm going to give this the size of 34. And now your button is looking a lot larger. So just for fun, we'll use a value of 64 and provide this with a padding value as well. Now, if you click on the image right here, you'll notice that you don't actually get a down state for your image. And you'll see that if I click on that, it actually has a down state. So the reason why that happens is because I'm actually wrapping the image inside of a button. And I'll kind of type it out right here so you can see how that's done. I'll just paste that code in the label. And once I have my button with an image inside of it, you can see I can click on that now, and it has a down state like so. Okay, moving on here, I'm going to create my text field components for my email and password. And this, you can simply use the, I believe one of these guys should work here. Let me just type out the code here. And for the text binding, I'm simply going to use a state of var. Let's use email equals the empty string. That should be okay. We'll use email here. And I don't think I need the prompt, so I'll just remove that. All right, once I have that, my application should start looking okay. I'm going to paste that in one more time, and this should be my password like so. All right, last thing I need to do is include a state variable of password right above. Let's use the empty string as well, and down here you can use the password. So type that in there and your application should update. I don't need this text component down there anymore. So I'll simply remove that and hit Command Option P, and your application should start looking like this here. Last thing I will do before I introduce some fixes is to, action of label. I'm going to include this last create account button. Let's use create account like that. And let me update my preview, and now you'll see your create account. This guy is styled pretty easily. I'm going to style this really quickly because I think the blue button really stands out. So I will use the background of .blue. I think I can do that. And maybe this needs the color of blue. Okay, foreground color of, maybe system, maybe just white. I think I'll bring out the actual font text. And then lastly, I can use the padding of vertical of maybe 8. That looks okay. Maybe 10 might be a little better. And then finally, I'll use the spacer here and also the spacer there. Okay, things are looking really, really nice now. And then the last thing I want to do is to include some padding for all of these components. And what I'll do is I'll take the padding off of my picker controller, and I'll include, a VStack right here, include the padding below. And then I will move all of these components inside of my VStack. Paste that in there, and now your application should look like so. All right, the next thing I'll do is to start modifying the email and password. So email@gmail.com, .com, and 123, Now, because my password is this text field, you'll see that your user that's typing in the password, you don't really get the nice masked elements inside of your field. So just go ahead and modify this to be this secure field like so. And now you should be okay. So 123, you'll get the dots instead of the actual password. Next, I might want to do something like this right here. So keyboard type and use the email address. And that looks okay. I think you can also do something like the auto capitalization. And this right here, you can just use none. All right, you'll see obviously the styling for this page doesn't look exactly like that, but I think the functionality here is mostly there. Now, I'm going to go ahead and confirm that everything is working by running this inside of one of these simulators here. I have the simulator on the bottom right, which is the iPhone Pro, or 13 Pro rather. I'm just going to hit Command R to run this entire view inside of the iPhone Pro. It's going to go ahead and try to run this inside of the simulator. I noticed that whenever you're working with a preview, you might have to hit the run twice before it launches in the simulator. But once you have it launched, your application should start looking like this here. All right, so it looks like our application is now up and running in the iPhone 13 Pro simulator. A couple of simple things I want to check is the email and password field right over here in the middle. I'm going to tap on the email, hit Command K to bring the keyboard up. You'll see the @ symbol right here, which means that I'm currently using an email address keyboard, which is on line 38 here. So again, things are looking pretty good. I'll hit test@gmail.com and just do that right there. I'll hit tab and 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Let me see the keyboard there. And things are looking like they're working. I can hit the create account. That's okay. I'll click on that and that. And this right here, the segment control, or the picker rather, it's currently missing the functionality that we see here. So for example, if I hit create account, you'll see this disappears. The create account button, it turns into login right there. And this title bar actually changes to login as well. So I'll show you guys exactly how to do that right now. I'm going to go ahead and head back into the application, obviously. And the next thing I will do is I'm going to modify the title bar, which is right below. So here is my create account navigation title. Let me wipe out those spaces, and in line 57, I will simply make a check on the state of is login mode, and we'll use the ternary operator. If that is true, we are going to say login like that. Otherwise, we will simply say create account. So nothing too complicated with the logic here, right? You'll see that if I'm in the login mode, which is going to happen when I click on that. Let me hit the stop and play one more time to refresh the preview. I click on that. You'll see once I'm in the login, we have this mode here. Why don't we make it say login with a space instead? And that's looking quite nice. We'll apply the same logic for this button in the middle. If I click on that, I don't want to see this image right here. The way I'm going to do that is I'm simply going to check the is login mode. And if I'm logging in, I don't really want to register this image. So that's what I'll do. Okay, finally, what I will add is some spacing for my elements. What I can do is to use this right here. I'm going to say VStack spacing of, let's just use 12 for now. Maybe 16 is a better value. That'll give these elements some gaps. Okay, and then finally, what I'll do is maybe I'll style this screen a little bit further. You'll notice that this is actually gray, and I'm going to apply the gray here. Let me just use the background color of color, and you can use init with white. I'll use this right here, and you can use the value of, let's use 0 and 0.05. Maybe that'll work. I'm going to hit try again, and hopefully I can get a color going. So I believe I need a dot right here. And once I have that, you'll see that the gray appears like so. I believe I can take this and put it on the navigation view itself, and you'll get something that looks like that. I believe if I bring this down one more, this should have a better effect. So let me just move that here. And then lastly, I'm going to apply a little modifier on the actual color. I'm going to click below here and just say ignores safe area. Once I do that, the color will expand all the way to the top and bottom of your iPhone application view. And once you have that, you can see things are looking very similar to what I have here. And then the last thing I will do is, let me see, this is looking a little bit weird. I'm going to go ahead and click on that right here. So I'm going to use if not login mode, I'll show this image. Otherwise, we'll see that there. If you want to style the email and password to have this white background, that's pretty easy. I will do that for the email address so you can kind of get the feel. Use the background color of, let's say, white, and we should be okay. So we have that, and I can say padding, let's say 4, we get this. And what I'll do is I'll use a padding of 12, and that's looking a lot better. So that's how I style my components. I will go ahead and apply that for the secure field as well. If you don't want to have these modifiers for every element, You can simply do this with a group and apply it on the group and put the actual elements inside of your group. And I will remove this guy here. And I think things are a lot better. So I'm going to highlight this right here, hit Command I or Control I rather to get the spacing correct. And maybe that looks a little better, Control I. And this looks a lot nicer in terms of the spacing and also the indentation. Okay, the last thing I'll do is for the create account button right here, if I'm in login, I would like to say login instead. This guy right here will apply the same check. So we are going to say is login mode. If that's true, we'll use the verb of login, which means I will have that and have that as well. Typically for your buttons inside of iOS, I think the font is maybe size right here, 14 and weight of semi-bold. So I like my font on the actual button to be a little larger, and that's what we'll do. Okay, things with my UI, all of the elements are appearing correctly in my opinion. Typically when you have a login page, right, you have two separate pages normally, one for creating the account, and then you have another page for logging in. So in other words, these views are separate, but just for the sake of this tutorial, I'm going to be creating these two pages as one single view. I think you guys kind of get the picture. Last bit of functionality that I'll include is the actual action of tapping on this login here. Whenever I tap on this button, we're actually executing this bit of code. And right between these two braces there, we're actually handling something called a button action. And that action, we can decide to do whatever we want. You can say print 1, 2, 3, and I'll run this in the simulator. I can't really show you the console in the preview, so I'll have to click on that right here. You'll see 1, 2, 3 appearing in the console area. So that's kind of what's happening. If I go down below, I can create a separate area for the code. Create a private function, and you'll say, handle action, and we will kind of do this right here. I'm going to check if login mode, then we'll say print should log in, so log into Firebase with existing credentials like that. Otherwise, we are going to say print register a new account inside of Firebase auth, and then store image in storage somehow. Okay, I am going to use handle action right here, and instead of print 1, 2, 3, we'll simply invoke the method of handle action. I'm going to run this inside of the simulator, and you'll see in the console below right there. I'm going to hit the create account. We are inside of create mode, so we're going to register a new account inside of Firebase. Finally, check the login state, click login, and we should log in using some existing credentials. All right, that is pretty much all I wanted to show you in today's video here. You'll see we simply have a content view for our entire application at the moment. Normally, I would like to rename this file to something that makes more sense. And I think Xcode is pretty capable of doing this right now. In other words, right-click, refactor, and then rename. Let's go ahead and make sure that the renaming works. I'm going to call this the login view. You can call this the create account view, register view, whatever you want, should be fine. I'm going to hit the enter and rename everywhere this file exists. You'll see login view has been renamed here. The actual component has been renamed there. And then inside of your actual application, the content view has been renamed there as well. So to confirm everything is working, we will resume the preview one more time. And I think things should be okay. So again, every time you apply a refactor, the Xcode editor gets kind of confused as to what this file is right now, and it just isn't able to recognize it for some reason. So let's hit the stop here. I think maybe after a restart of Xcode, you can get this preview up and running, but I think things should be okay. I'm going to make sure everything is working here and things are looking good. If you maybe switch over to another file and go back into login view, this should refresh itself. But one thing I think you might want to try is to rename this guy to previews 1. And whenever you run into this problem, you have to try various workarounds. But when you modify this previews to a different name, I believe Xcode will render a different preview inside of its cache. And so this is actually a new preview, and you're not using the previous one anymore. So that's the fix for that. And yeah, everything is looking quite nice. We have our file named correctly, and we have all of the functionality being performed inside of our single create account page here.